Dang, I ain't got my necklace on. Oh well, we're going to make it do. Hey y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your girl Victoria Rose. Rose, say it together, stay apart. Really don't make a difference to me. Today I'm doing it a little different. I'm doing my vlog from the Mac PC because I just got off of a very informal webinar, Zoom meeting, however you want to call it. But first things first, let me do my little shout out with my collabs. I am not going to mess up these people's Instagram name. I'm not even gonna do it. But this is what it looks like. Super cute. I got the sleeves pulled up because it's a little toasty in the room. But it's super cute. Shows your shape. Got my little butt knocking back there. I'm tall, so y'all know I can't turn around or I will take somebody's picture. But anyways, let's get back to what I was talking about. I did not say the name to this Instagram boutique because I don't want to mess up the name. I'm gonna put the description in the video. I mean, I'll put the link in the description. Look at me talking dyslexic. Okay, y'all. First things first. I have been in some very informal, very helpful women empower women. I was just included today, and I feel very informed. A lot of y'all know my friend Cindy, who follow me and know me. For those of you who don't know her, her name is Cindy. Awesome friend. I've known her my whole life. I've seen her go through her ups and downs, and I've seen her grow into the beautiful rose that she is. Now, a lot of y'all know Cindy, but y'all don't know what she do. Let me tell y'all about my girl. Cindy is a woman's policy fellow. She writes policy reform for women's justice issues at the legislature, and she gets them signed and turned into laws by the governor. She is also the head of the Texas Women's Justice Coalition, which is for former incarcerated women. They push for reform to make available resources for other women who's to have a successful reentry. Like when they get out, it ain't so hard. And with being a woman and then being a woman of color, like it's just we need more people like her. Long story short, the organization that she's with is the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, and they have been doing policy reform for 20 years. And today she allowed me to join in on a webinar with a writer. Her name was Brittany Barnett, and she was completely for women helping women in the messed up justice system that I was going to say backdrop that Texas has for women. And I'm gonna post a few, like not a few, but a couple clips on here. Y'all, she's a beautiful person, beautiful soul. Like, I learned so much listening to her talk, and it was really helpful. She had a lot of advice. She gave a lot.
For years, often at higher rates for Black and Hispanic women. Why do you think the number of incarcerated women has grown so much in the U.S. and in Texas specifically?
You know, first I'll just say that it's so disheartening to see this rapid increase in the number of women who are incarcerated in this country. The numbers are daunting. The statistics are staggering, especially knowing how approximate I was to the issue. But we have to look beyond the numbers and see the heartbeats of women who were system impacted. And I think that the number of incarcerated women is going up so much is from a conglomerate of reasons. One, because we have this misguided appeal for law and order that we've had for decades now, where we're punishing everything. Everything is so punitive in this country. Texas is leading the way in a lot of reforms these days, but they need to be because they were leading the way in a lot of incarceration rates and things of that nature before, and so something that I talk about in the book that my grandpa would say when I was trying to get money from him for my report card was, I'm not going to reward you for doing something you're supposed to do. Texas is leading the way in criminal justice because they're supposed to be. They need to be. And we're grateful for the progress, but a lot of work needs to be done. And part of the reason that these rates are increasing is because in our program with Girls Embracing Mothers, we go in the women's prisons in Gatesville, and 100% of our mothers in the program have been impacted by some type of trauma. I truly believe that physical, emotional trauma is the number one leading cause to many women getting involved in the system. And then once they're there with these true issues that require everything but incarceration, once you're in the system, unfortunately, because of this punitive way that society treats people with various issues, quite frankly, they're locking them up, and it's just not the way to go. And so I think the leading cause is trauma, coupled with the fact that we were such in this lock them up, throw away the keys, such in this law and order type of environment. And I'm glad to see Texas trying to reverse course, but when you're starting from a place where there was a lot of trauma and impact happening in the Texas criminal justice system, Texas needs to be leading the way.
Wow. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I believe that the approach is definitely going to be trauma informed. It's not going to be punitive punishment.
Absolutely.
And as we talk about punitive punishment kind of being the tradition of justice and the criminal legal system, justice in Texas, you also in your book share a lot about your experience growing up with an incarcerated mother who was incarcerated due to issues related to addiction and drug use. Can you share a little bit about what that experience taught you about addiction and drug use?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I became keenly aware of my mom's addiction at about 10 years old. My mom was addicted to crack cocaine, and she was what people called functioning at the time because she was still going to work. My mom was a nurse. From the outside looking in, we appeared to have a normal family. And at first, dealing with the addiction as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, for some reason, we feel as children, or I felt as a child, that I could fix my mom at 10. And so when we're children and chaos is unfolding around us and arms reach away, we try to do what we can to fix it. So my steps to dealing with my mom's addiction started with, okay, well, I can fix her. Not realizing at 10 that my mom's addiction was not my burden to bear. I could not fix her. And there were deeper underlying issues there. And so from there, as I got older into my teenage years, being an 80s baby, this is where I grow up during the DARE programs and the Just Say No programs, and where these programs are being taught in our schools as showing people with addiction being the least of these and the worst of the worst. And you have to be just truly morally corrupt to succumb to addiction. And so I'm battling as a teenager these two perceptions of what I'm hearing about people who are addicted to drugs in school and what I'm seeing with my mom, and so that just creates a lot of different emotions in a teenager who's already going through a lot of emotions already, of just a lot of resentment and anger, rage almost. And then that's coupled with fear, worry, concern for your mama. And then as I got older and started to learn more, I realized that my mom, one, wasn't an addict. She was a woman who was suffering with an addiction. And that addiction was a disease. Like when I thought about it more, after my mom went to prison, we used to have these true, open, and honest conversations, right? And I would think back through some of the things that happened in my childhood, some of them that I reflect on in the book. And you think, what person in their right mind, would do X, Y, or Z? And so you learn more about this disease of addiction and really on how treatment is necessary and not punishment. So there was a roller coaster, of a true evolution of my journey to understanding addiction and drug sentencing. And it was something that, I witnessed firsthand.
It's so impactful to hear you describe that experience as a 10-year-old, how acutely aware you were of what was going on. I just thank you for sharing that and yeah, letting us get a little bit of insight into what that was like for you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think so many people in this generation, so many young children, so many young mothers, I think a lot of them can relate to what you're saying and can share that experience and those feelings with you. More and more people are coming to understand that drug abuse and addiction are not crimes and that they should be addressed, that they should not be addressed through incarceration, but rather public health issues that should be addressed outside of the criminal justice system, like we were just speaking about. What are your thoughts about that shift? And what, if anything, do you think could have helped your mom and your family during her struggle with addiction?
I am very happy that there's a shift in treatment versus punishment. I see, the opioid crisis, for example, that this country is grappling with right now, and that this branding of it as a public health crisis, because it is a public health crisis and rehabilitation is needed. And if I'm honest, I take that and I think about my mom and crack and the crack epidemic that was also a public health crisis, but that was demonized and criminalized. And I feel that America's on the right track with the public health crisis and the rehabilitation, but we can't forget what happened with the war on drugs and the crack epidemic. And there's still a lot there that needs to be rectified and addressed. There are still people with addiction that's lingering over from the crack epidemic. There are still people serving draconian sentences that are lingering over from the crack epidemic. So I think the shift is necessary and needed. And we can't forget the last chance came for her with failing another drug test. Again, she never committed any new crimes. She was sentenced. She caught the case in 2000, and so she went to prison in 2006. And in small rural towns in Texas, there's no alternative drug courts. And I don't know that it was ever, her addiction was ever even looked upon as needing something other than incarceration. When my mom went to prison, I was 22 at the time. My sister was 21, and we were still deeply impacted by her incarceration. And it's a huge issue of having a parent in prison in general. It's heartbreaking. But Alicia, when it's your mama, it's like a primal wound. And that just ripples across the whole family, when you worry about your loved one. My mom was incarcerated in Texas prisons at a time when there was no phones. So our communication was solely through the mail. We went to visit her once a month. And those visits, you can truly feel just the dehumanization as soon as you drive on the prison parking lot. Even just the trauma, that inflicts. I remember going to visit my mom for the first time in Gatesville. She was at the Woodman unit. And I never been to visit anyone in prison at that time. And the correctional officer said, "Do you have underwire in your bra?" before I went through the metal detector. And I just remember how I panicked and thinking, do I? Like, I don't know. Like, what if I do? Is she going to send me back? Like, I drove all this way from Dallas. And to me, that is just that's mental trauma. It's mental violence. And to have to go through that, it's a lot. It's a lot for families. It's really devastating. And it's a lot for the person, your loved one, in prison as well. The visits are necessary and needed to keep that connection and that bond, but leaving is not. It never gets easier. You can only find your strength and looking forward to the next visit. But I definitely know for a fact that when one person goes to prison, the whole family does. And the system of incarceration, of mass incarceration, it devastates families and entire communities. It truly, truly does.
Yeah, you talk about the trauma. I remember in your book you mentioned um, how your mom needed to recover after your visits, for a few days, just because of how devastating that whole experience was. And so this trauma that you're talking about, you've made it clear that it stretches so far beyond just the person who's incarcerated. Yeah. So what do you think is most important for the women who are caught up in the system to hear?
I'm just a true believer in the power of hope and love. And I think the most important thing for women caught up in the system that I would tell them is to know that the cycle can be broken and it can start with them, and I know the cycle can be broken because my mama and I are living proof. It is a vicious cycle. It's ruthless. And a lot of times I think we just sometimes forget our power, and that's what I would tell them. Just never give up hope in yourself first and foremost, and to know that cycle can be broken. We're just much bigger than that cycle if we take control.
Very, very powerful words, very moving words. I think that is great advice for women to hang on to. Me being a formerly incarcerated woman myself, visiting the same unit that your mother was on, Whitman unit, I do know that the cycle can be broken, and I do know that faith and hope are sometimes the only thing that you have to hold on to. And if they will hold steadfast to that, it will be fruitful for them. Yeah. Based on what you shared in your book, you experienced a high number of adverse childhood experiences, as well as trauma and violence in your young adult years. Yet your resiliency has been clear throughout your life. What would you say were the major resilient factors that helped you along the way?
Connection is probably one, because I had a strong connection with my family. Even my mom through her addiction, even my mom through incarceration. So connection is definitely one. I think when I would go visit my mom, I would always just be so in awe at other children visiting their moms, other little girls, and just knowing that even though I was a young adult, one thing I had in common with this 9 or 10-year-old girl was that we loved our mamas. And that love was unconditional, And so the connection for me was a resiliency factor. Control. I just, my mom was fierce and just bold and courageous. Unfortunately, addiction is strong, and it was stronger than her for a while until she realized her strength to overcome. But I carry that, too, from my mom. And so it's kind of like being able to overcome adverse situations in a healthy way is a form of resilience, but just being that, feisty, fearless young girl my mama raised, of being in control of my life. And so part of that resiliency was nothing is going to control my life but me, and I'm going to make decisions that are what I want to do. I saw what drugs did to my mom and my family. So as part of being in control of that situation, I was not going to let myself go there, my life, And so it's hard to explain it, but yeah, I would say control was part of that resiliency factor too, just controlling my own destiny,
She has gotten 8 people who had maximum to life for federal drug charges. Like, she's gotten them off. She did like 7 during Obama's term, and she's done 1 during Donald Trump's term. She's like a beast in the hip hop world. and she's a beast in the justice system. So really and truly, she's like a force to be reckoned with. And I just got a chance to like see inside and like listen to my friend ask really important questions and push really important ideas and things that should be changed. And whenever they were talking, like, y'all, it's so messed up for women because like they're changing and reforming laws that shouldn't even be laws. Like now women are not shackled when they give birth if you're incarcerated, which should have been. Like who wants to be shackled? And your body is already, you already feel like literally every bone in your body is breaking. And now you shackled. Like who does that? Like they're finally giving women like toiletries and pads and stuff whenever they're on their cycle, which should have been done, y'all. Like, so really and truly what she's doing with this book is she's waking a lot of y'all up. And she's letting y'all what's really going on in the world for women that are incarcerated, that are considered druggies, and all of that. And that ain't even their story. They paint monsters out of nothing. I agree with the book. I promote the book. I'm going to put the link down below. Y'all really check out the book. I'm not done with my vlog, but I have to get off because duty calls. I'll share my good news with y'all. I am doing a virtual interview with a modeling agency at 7:15. It's over Zoom. They gave me a script for a commercial that I have to do. I've aced it. And now I'm fixing to talk to them, see what it's about, and I'll be back and give y'all the results on that. Wish me luck.